The summary of this story. After dropping into hell and having a special brand of fun, Joker learns a lot about this new world he finds himself now in. He learns of his powers and about the demons that reside here, and he makes plenty of friends along the way. But most of all, he learns about the Overlords, and already he has plans for one in particular. Now, unbeknownst to him, Vox has the attention of Gotham's most deadly killer, on top of whatever Sir Pentious has been planning for him. Will the Joker succeed in overthrowing Vox, or will he fall like so many others who have attempted to attack one of the V's? Now let's get started, shall we? Chapter 1. Death is a laughing matter. Part 1. All it takes is one bad day. It's what made me who I am. Failed father, failed husband, failed comedian, failed businessman, failed whatever. I don't even remember what I was a failure of, but I remember falling, and that sickening stench of chemicals, growing stronger as I fell, until I was completely enveloped by it, submerged in the toxic liquid, and in all those last moments before I lost all vision, though the red haze of the helmet stuck to my head, I saw him stand up high above me. And no, I don't mean God, although it would be funny if he was dressed like that. The next thing I know, I'm laying face first in the mud, the sound of rain echoing around the dome that gripped my skull. And it wasn't until I stripped it off that I came face to face with, well, my face. Although it was hard to tell it was even mine at first. I couldn't begin to understand. By all accounts, I should be dead. After all, I didn't have anything to live for. So why wasn't I dead? Then it hit me. It was a joke. It was a joke everyone around me would laugh at. But I couldn't understand, at the time, what was so funny. In that moment, I understood. And for the very first time, I laughed. I laughed until I cried. Then laughed some more. I have nothing to live for. Hardly. I have everything to live for. No name, no face, no failed past. Nothing but a future. And damn, did it look bright. Although, I don't think you're quite paying attention to my story, are you? I asked the red creature sitting across from me. Please, if I'm boring you, just tell me. I would hate to ramble on deaf ears. The red creature looked on with dull eyes. His mouth hung limp. I can tell by your slack-jawed expression you're incredibly bored. I sighed. I understand your boredom, friend. I continued, wrapping my arm around my oddly colored compatriot. I used to have so much fun in those early days, you see. I made my goal on that day. My mission, to spread laughter and cheer to all those who sulk in the dark. I would put on a bright, colorful costume and jump rooftop to rooftop, scoring the city for anyone to share my laughter with. Sometimes I'd perch on a gargoyle and reflect whimsically on my jokes, but at the end of the day, as long as someone was laughing, I knew my city was in good hands. The man in my arms slumped forward and hit his head on the bar in front of us. Well, looks like someone drank too much. Barkeep, We may want to cut this one off, I shouted. After getting no reply in return, I sighed again. You just can't hire good help these days. Now, what was I saying? Oh, right. My city was in good hands. The keyword is was. That's when he showed up again. The man who's not God. The absolute madman who ran around dressed like a bat. He made a mockery of everything I've done. He swore an oath to beat the ever-living hell out of anyone in his way, knocking the smiles right out of their mouths. He put on a dark, brooding costume and made dark, brooding perches on gargoyles. My gargoyles! And as if it couldn't possibly get any worse, he called me the criminal. Me, the man who paralyzed people from the neck down, called me a criminal. Now, when I say I'm perfect, of course not. I'm not a liar. I have made mistakes along the way. But what's a couple hundred or maybe a couple 100,000 mistakes? At least people were happy. And that's worth all the mistakes in the world. But I can tell you firsthand that nobody smiled when this guy was around. He was like the anti-me. His brooding and scowling was infectious. You'd think I'd hate the guy, but on the contrary, he made my work all the more meaningful. Once he came into my life, I couldn't think of a day without him in it. We were pretty much a dynamic duo. If he wasn't there every time I helped someone, it would feel empty. So I hope you can see my melancholy friend, because I'm here and he's up there, punching people without abandon. Do you think he misses me as much as I miss him? Oh, he must spend even more time sulking on gargoyles now. It's almost enough to make me cry. I finished, dramatically putting the back of my hand on my head, opening one eye. I looked down at the man, still slumped onto the bar. I grimaced slightly. Hello? I asked, leaning over, cupping a hand to my ear. After no response, I swiveled in my seat to address the whole bar. Oh, don't tell me I was talking to myself again. What's the matter with you? Is everyone dead? 3 hours earlier. I woke up with a start. I was lying face first in the grass, my head pounding. Putting a hand up to it, I groaned and rolled onto my back. With my eyes closed, I took a few moments to breathe and wait until the pain subsided. In those moments, I tried to think of what happened to get me here. Usually I wake up like this. It's in my cold cell or in the trunk of a heavily armored supercar. But this was new. So what the hell happened? And why can't I for the life of me remember? As I felt the pain go away, I opened my eyes to see a familiar red sky along with something new. A giant pentagram floating above towering skyscrapers. This was enough to wake me up fully from my dazed state. What the hell is this? I said to nobody, picking myself up. I dusted down and looked at myself to see what new injuries I sustained today. For my second shock since waking up, I found myself mostly unscathed. My shoes were still shiny and pointed. My bright purple suit remained colorful, torn only in the familiar places. My flowers still wilted, yet it was pinned to my chest in the same place. And my gloves matched my suit, with a much darker purple shade. Everything was accounted for, which only served to add to my confusion. Looking up from my suit, I surveyed the area surrounding me. Trees surrounded the immediate area, some bushes here and there, and behind me there was a sidewalk stretching through the trees in 2 directions. Light posts lined the sidewalk, illuminating the path, and between every other post there was a bench, a small garden of flowers of multiple varieties sat directly across the sidewalk from where I stood. There was nobody else with me. So, Gotham Central Park, eh? It looks almost like it, but it seems off. Did Ivy do something different while she was out? I'd ask aloud, once again to nobody. That still doesn't explain the giant pentagram, though. I continue turning my eyes once again to the sky above. Could it be aliens? If it is, that means Patsy wouldn't be paying attention to me. What a pity. I frowned, thinking for a moment, then smiling. Well, this will at least give me some people to kill. I mean, time to kill until he's done being preoccupied. Oh, but so many ideas. I just don't know what to do first. Stepping forward, I walked onto the sidewalk and followed the path out of the park. Let's see. I put my arms behind my head as I thought to myself. I could go to Mercy Hospital, swap out all the oxygen tanks with my special brand of happy gas. That's a classic. Oh, or maybe shoot everyone in that one comedy club on Miller Avenue. They never were funny, but if this is some sort of weird alien thing, I could always do the classic bombing an orphanage. They never know it was me. How about all of the above? It was then I heard the familiar click of a gun hammer being pulled back, and I stopped in my tracks.
All right, weirdo. Quit talking to yourself and hand over everything you got. Then I'll put a bullet between your eyes.
A voice said behind me. Then in front of me I saw two figures step out of the trees. But in the darkness of the shade I couldn't quite make out what they looked like. Not concerning myself with them for the moment, I began to address the man behind me. All right, firstly, my friend, you don't threaten to kill someone once you steal from them. You threaten to do it if they don't hand things over. That's theft 101 for you. And secondly, do you have any idea who you are threatening? I am. I spun around to face my assailant, and they had my third shock. Jesus! The man behind me wasn't a man at all. He was a giant gun with legs and arms that resembled those old cartoons. Even had the gloves and had cartoony eyes that sat on the sides of the gun, which now looked quizzically at me.
Oh yeah, buddy? Well, I'm Moses. Now hand over all your shit, 'cause if I shoot you now, there won't be much left to steal from.
Whipping my head around, I noticed the other two figures had moved in closer. I could see one of them was a giant mole, wearing blue overalls, and wielding an especially large pickaxe. And his comrade was, ironically enough, a bat, although he looked nothing like the one I'm familiar with. And the suit he wore wasn't grey nor spandex, rather a bright red, and in his hand he was carrying a normal-sized gun. Turning my attention back to the big gun, he extended his arm out and made a motion with his hand. Okay, so what the hell are you? I've met some pretty odd people in my life, believe me, but you are something else entirely, and you called me weird. How do you even work? The gun didn't seem to like my comments.
Keep talking, man. I got no problem just killing you right now.
I'm sorry, but at least your friends make sense. Believe it or not, giant animals are very common around here. But you, let me guess, experiment gone wrong? Alternate dimension, dark dimension, the future. I point up to the sky. Alien?
Okay, that's enough.
He said, cutting me off, his eyes narrowed in what I assumed to be a glare.
I'll see what I can find off the pieces of your corpse.
I started to see the trigger on this gunman being pulled back. Sticking my hand out and making a stop motion, I blurted out, All right, I give up. Just let me search through my coat, see if I have anything so I can save you the trouble of wasting your time. The trigger on the gun relaxed.
Fine, get it to it, pal.
I reached into my coat, annoyed at the situation I was in. This can't be Gotham. Everyone in Gotham knows who I am. The gunman thing would be pissing lead if he knew who I was. No, I'm not in Gotham. So where the hell am I? That's something I'll have to figure out once I deal with this. Do I even have anything on me? For some reason, I'm having trouble finding my usual toys.
Hurry up, pal. You better not be stalling,
the gunman said, looking up at him. Keep your clip in. I'm looking. I was unconscious not 10 minutes ago. It's hard to focus when you've possibly had a few marbles knocked loose. And you know what they say about losing your marbles. They're hard to find. Then my hand brushed against something. It was small and round, and I felt a bit of a string sticking out of it. I stopped and gave an especially large grin, and my eyes turned back to the giant gun.
Hey, what's so funny, clown?
Oh, nothing. It's just I thought of a joke. Would you like to hear it?
Seriously? Look, I told you what I want, and so far my hands are still empty, so make with the change already.
Yes, I know, but you're going to kill me anyways, and I thought I might as well have a last request, right? And I should get out of the way now rather than later. Before I forget, the gun seems irritated by this, putting his hands by his grip. His foot tapped annoyingly on the ground. With an annoyed sigh, he replied,
All right, fine. Whatever. I ain't got nothing else tonight. Just make it quick. And make it funny.
Oh, I will. It'll blow you away. I chuckle a little. Knock, knock.
Seriously? A knock-knock joke?
The gun rolls its eyes.
Who's there?
Ka!
Ka who?
My smile widened even more, and in a quick motion, I pulled the small bomb out of my coat and shoved it in the end of the gun's mouth barrel. Then, leapfrogging off the top of the gun, I landed behind him and wrapped my arms around his trigger hole. Kaboom! Pulling the trigger back as hard as I could, I watched the gunman explode into shrapnel as the bullet connected with the bomb. What used to be his barrel was fractured and split open in multiple directions. Black smoke leaked out of the top and into the air. His big eyes rolled back to look at me as his arms and legs went limp. I grimaced as I met his eyes. Ugh, creepy. I let go of him and he fell to the sidewalk with a loud clunk. One of his eyes squished between his body and the ground. With his barrel tilted down, liquid as black as the smoke started to roll out of the end and pool into the ground beneath him. I looked down at him, my smile having returned to my face. I told you it would blow you away. And I thought my guns were outlandish. But a giant talking gun! There's something I'll have to think about, adding to my collection. My attention turned to his two comrades, who were looking at me in shock. I could see they were hesitant on what to do now that I killed their leader. I decided it would be best to speak first. Now, what to do about the two of you? I put my hand up to my chin, closing one eye and arching the other, as I put on the act of thinking. At that moment, the one that looked like a giant Mo in overalls caught an expression of anger and started to charge at me. His bat friend hung back, still hesitant on how to react.
I'm gonna skewer you, you sadistic clown!
The mole shouted, his pickaxe dragging behind him. As he got closer, I held my ground and went back to searching through my coat again. Normally I keep it close to me, but once again I'm having trouble finding it. What the hell is going on? It's like things are shifting around my inside of my clothes without my knowledge. Did I put them on backwards? Seriously, how hard is it to find? Oh! There it is. And just in time, too, as the mole had now stopped just short of me and was raising his pickaxe high in the air behind him, ready to slam it down on my head. His eyes, while beady, were full of animosity. Naturally, using my tearing intellect, I analyzed his entire moveset and what he was going to do and how fast the velocity of the axe would be as it descended upon me. Judged the wind speed and temperature, made a note to pick up eggs before I forgot, and then I stepped to the side. The pickaxe slammed down into the ground, embedding itself deep into the sidewalk where I once stood. The mole, noticing he didn't impale me, let out an angry grunt as he tried to pull the pickaxe back out of the ground. It didn't budge. Confused, the mole desperately continued to tug at the handle of his weapon, but to no avail. I decided to watch him for a few more moments. Then I walked to his side. Clamping a hand down on his shoulder, I said, "Ooh, what a shame. Swing and a miss, champ. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll do better next season. In the meantime, how about we play a new game to cheer you up?" Grabbing the object in my coat, I found a familiar medal as I pulled it out to show it to the mole man. Displaying my crowbar, I proudly smiled and said, "Ever hear of whack-a-mole?" Fear instantly came to the mole person's eyes, and they were the last thing I saw in his eyes before my crowbar smashed into his skull and popped them right out. The sight of his eyes dangling out of his head and swinging like a pair of tetherballs made me burst out laughing. Shakily, he tried to crawl away, but with his new lack of vision and possible brain damage, he just kept going round and round in circles, which made me laugh all the harder. In between my laughs, I swung the crowbar up and back down onto the man's skull, caving it in more and more, and throwing blood everywhere, staining the sidewalk, the grass beneath us, in a bright red. With every loud crunch, his movement slowed and then stopped. Then the only movements of his body made was a shudder as my crowbar embedded itself into what was left of his cranium. This was too much fun. Eventually, I heard the loud clang of metal on the concrete, and I stopped, having nothing left of substance to slam my crowbar into. Breathlessly, I crouched down and said, "You know, I normally use this thing on robins." I gestured to the crowbar in my hands, but it seems to work just well with any animal. Wiping sweat off my forehead, I heard the sound of vomiting to my left, and looked at the bat person who was now on their hands and knees, chucking up whatever it is they ate today.
Oh God, I can't fucking do this.
They paused to vomit some more. Spitting a couple times, they continued,
I just wanted some easy money, man. I don't want to die. I gotta get out of here.
He started to scramble back to his feet, careful not to slip on the puddle of vomit beneath him. Watching him, I stood back up and dropped the crowbar to the ground. Reaching into my coat for the last time, I pulled out a standard revolver and pointed it at him. "Don't move another step." The bat person froze, looking at me with the same fear the mole person had. Walking closer to him, I continued, "Yes, don't move an inch, don't blink, don't sing show tunes, and most of all," I stopped right in front of him and pointed the gun right at his temple. "Don't breathe." The bat was scared stiff as he took one last lungful of air and held it. Arching an eyebrow, I smiled at him. "You know what's funny? Besides everything else that's happened so far, you're nothing like the bat I know. The complete opposite, in fact. I killed 2 people, and you responded by sitting down and crying and vomiting. Possibly pissing yourself, too. You wear a suit that doesn't look like an insane person made it. The color, though, red, tacky. And speaking of insane, who commits crime in a suit anyway? You'd have to be a total nutcase." Tears streamed down the bat's face as he shook slightly, as whatever oxygen he had left in his body ran out. "And you know what's funnier than all that?" I asked, leaning closer to the bat, making him recoil slightly in fear. Looking into his dark, beady eyes, I said, "You 3 schmucks have no idea who I am. This may not be Gotham, but the people around the world should know who I am. So either I'm not in the world, or you are the dumbest criminals alive. Jury's still out in either case, but I do intend to find out. So allow me to remedy this current issue and tell you." I pressed the gun harder against the bat's head. "Who I am."
Can't I breathe first?
The bat squeaked out, all oxygen from his system. Noticing how my introduction would do no good if he was unconscious, I permitted. "Oh, all right, 1 breath." I put a finger up. The bat's mouth and eyes opened wide as he inhaled as much oxygen as possible. and I took that opportunity to remove the gun from his head and place it inside his mouth. His eyes looked down at his mouth and back at me. I'm the goddamn Joker. I stepped back and fully extended my arm. Squeezing the trigger of the gun, the bat closed his eyes. Bang! Slowly the bat opened his eyes, one by one. Seeing light smoke escape his mouth, then looking past that into my eyes, I retained my steely scowl as we locked eyes. Slowly I pulled the gun back out of his mouth. It a small flagpole. At the end of a cloth flag covered in saliva read, bang! A large grin swept back across my face as I waved it at him, and I erupted into laughter as the bat looked at me in fearful confusion.
What? I don't understand. Aren't you going to kill me?
The bat stuttered, stepping back a bit and putting his arms up defensively. I left a few more seconds before I gave my response. Kill you? Oh, please. There'll be time for that later. I walked to the bat's side and wrapped an arm tightly around him, bringing him close. Like I said, I have no idea where I am, and while I could figure it out by myself, I feel it would speed things along if I had a guide. And considering you're the only one around here with an intact skull, that job will have to go to you! The bat struggled slightly in my grip.
Well, I mean, I don't think I really should.
He stammered. Oh, no, please, I thumbed the hammer of the gun back, causing the flag to fall out of the pill and loaded the next real round into the chamber, and placed the gun back against his head. I insist. The bat looked frightfully up at me, and back ahead of him, then nodded his head quickly, removing the gun from his skull. I laughed. Attaboy! Now, then, take me somewhere fun. We can talk along the way. I paused for a moment, embarrassed by my lack of manners. Oh, how rude of me! I nearly forgot to ask for your name.
It's Bruce, just Bruce.
The bat whimpered out. Bruce? What a fun name! I feel like we're gonna get along just well together. For that one little time you have left alive. The bat whimpered some more, hearing that. Now then, onward, Bruce! The park isn't as lively as it once was. I burst out and laughed at my wisecrack. Bruce hung his head low and shook as he let out more tears. And with one foot in front of the other, we strolled along the sidewalk and followed it as it led out of the park and into the city beyond. Thank you for joining me in this wonderful story from a little person. Check the description below for the information upon that. This is all one shot, pretty much no editing. Subscribe, like, share, whatever the frick you people do. And I'll see you in the next conversation.